Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we've got a bit of a news roundup for you. We'll be covering that tasty new Lunar New Year skin as well as yesterday's Hanzo Huangzong tribute to the Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel. Will we see a complete set of the 5 Tiger Generals as Overwatch skins by the time the event comes along? I'm hoping so, even if most of us did learn about these characters through Dynasty Warriors and not the historical novel. We are gamers after all. We'll then move on to Jayne's recent Reddit AMA, where he answered questions about many subjects, but one of the best was how he explained the traits and failings of each individual rank in the ladder. Poko's recent tweet about the nerfed PTR D.Va, which includes some funny comments from his Philly Fusion teammate Boombox, as well as IDDQD, and then we'll cover an article on InvenGlobal where Slasher details his opinions about what direction Overwatch needs to move in competitively with PashLol. There's quite a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, so let's just jump straight in. Okay, so first up, we just have to deal with this new Guan Yu Reinhardt skin. This might be one of the best Rein skins in the entire game. No joke, I think it's absolutely amazing. Guan Yu is one of the most popular figures in Chinese folklore history, so much so that he was deified after his death. And I can see this being one of the most sought after skins ever. Everything about it is tier 1. The face, the beard, the jade detailing on his armor, the awesome bull figure on his shield arm, and of course, one of the coolest Rein weapons ever, this dragon gilded jade and steel staff blade. I don't play Rein myself, but I'm gonna spend way more than I should to get this. Every time I look at it, it gets a little bit better. The dragon on his right pauldron is just... Man, it's been a long time since I raved about a skin this much. What a fantastic job, Blizzard. Really, really amazing. Let me know what you guys think about this skin in the comment section below. I can't see anyone not being blown away. And of course, we got this Hanzo Huangzong skin late last night. Well, late for the UK anyway. I have to say, I really like what they've done for this year. I actually prefer them to the Journey to the West variants we've gotten previously, and this Hanzo one is really, really good. There couldn't have been a better choice for a Tiger General whose archery was infamous, could there? Everything about it, the beard, the scar, the shoulder plate, it's all awesome. The winged helm with the red plume makes him look like a warrior king, or an emperor's custodian if you're a 40k lore geek like me and know what that means. He doesn't have gold armor, sure, but whenever I see a red plume on any character, it makes me think of them. Anyway, I think it's great. You guys will have to let me know what you think about these skins and the event theme in general in the comment section down below. Moving on, we're going to cover some of Jayne's Reddit AMA, which was very entertaining and informative. I'll link it in the description so you can go and check out the full thing for yourself if you want to. But the part I'm going to focus on was the answer to the very first question. In response to a user asking about what specific things each rank lacks in terms of mechanics, positioning, cooldown management and other Overwatch skills, Jayne outlined each rank and gave a tiny bit of coaching for each one. For bronze and silver players, he said that there's many reasons why a player might find themselves there: poor mechanics, FPS inexperience, or poor awareness, etc. But that getting out of that rank can usually be solved by addressing the biggest single inhibitor to their performance, rather than trying to teach oneself something too advanced that might only become relevant at, say, Platinum. From a personal perspective, I think that's fantastic advice, as it's generally true that learning any discipline requires the learner to segment off aspects of the larger subject to make it easier to digest, rather than learning a massively complex subject all at one time. And being completely real, I can understand why it can be hard to do that in Overwatch, because I don't think the game does players any favors in that regard, because it's such a deep game with so many maps and game modes. It can be incredibly overwhelming to try and just improve, even if you're only learning one hero at a time. How many different skill sets does a hero like Ana have, for example? A lot, let me tell you. For gold level players, Jayne says their biggest weakness is often positioning. He doesn't go into much detail about that because he could rant forever, but essentially his advice is, at gold, you could win a lot more games just by learning to play safely and conservatively and waiting for your opponents to make the mistakes instead. Being safe and knowing when to punish is a huge part of many competitive games, including my beloved Street Fighter, which you guys know I like to make familial and conceptual links to Overwatch with. For Platinum players, it's their hero cooldowns that really need improvement. He makes the comparison between a Plat Ana and a GM1, whereby a Plat will waste sleep dart often and a GM1 can win an entire fight with it. On top of that observation, I would say at Plat and above, it really starts to pay off watching the very best individuals individuals on whatever hero you're trying to improve at, as they'll typically be well on top of how they manage their character's kit and the context in which they try to gain advantages with it. For Diamond, he says this is the level where basic synergies and matchups need to be understood better. Who you counter, who counters you, what teammate heroes you synergize with, and the same for your opponents. We start to move beyond basic play and move into acquiring game knowledge and how it applies. Or at least we should be, right? For Masters, Jayne has a two-pronged problem. There's a challenge at this rank because you're caught between two extremes. Firstly, if you have diamonds in your match, you'll be expected to hard carry, and secondly, if you're the Masters player in a GM game, you'll have to be careful not to relentlessly feed in this tougher environment. A lot of people get stuck there for these reasons, but the general advice that he gives is to try and work on your sense of how team comp affects a match, how map control and flanking can determine results, and overall an effort to develop and apply the knowledge you've gained thus far. In other words, this is arguably where playing actual Overwatch can start. For GM and top 500, Jayne just quotes Surefor, which I'll paraphrase now. There's three aspects that makes up a good player: mechanics, game sense, and positioning. The more of those three key skills you master, the higher you will be, with pros being at the level where they're good at all three. Jayne actually ranks mechanics as the least important out of the three, and positioning as the biggest factor. Again, I'd just like to add to that a little bit. Despite being much lower myself, I've noticed from the pro guides that we make that playmaking is a huge shared trait for the absolute top players. Jonak and OGE, for example, not only have all the fundamentals of their heroes rock solid, but they understand how to break rules when it's applicable. When you get to that level, risk-reward assessment on, say, an audacious flank or an unorthodox piece of positioning is what separates the very, very good from the great. I once called Jonak's playstyle disrespectful in the best possible way, and that's kind of what I mean by that. He can only do that because he's perfected everything else leading up to it. The rest of the AMA is great too, by the way. Like I said earlier, it's in the description, so go and check it out for yourself. Next up, we've got this fun tweet and set of interactions set off by Poko from the Philly Fusion. In it, he said, "From what I can tell on the new patch, as a diva, the best way to use Matrix is often to not use it." To which Boombox replied by memeing him about this being the reason he keeps dying, and IDDQD even chimed in with a joking "thank you, appreciate it," and a cowboy hat emoji. That could mean either McCree or Ash, seeing as he's sick with both. Now, as fun as this is, we know that the Overwatch League will be using the current PTR patch for stage 1. That means armor nerfs, diva nerfs, and Reaper buffs. Poko's tweet is actually a fascinating insight into the pro scrim scene and what might be happening there. Now, at first, I took this as Poko is saying the ability has a much lower impact on the pro game than it had previously, with Defense Matrix being absolutely key to many different pro metas in the past. But FREEDO had a different angle. He said, actually, this is quite common, that what Poko was saying was, instead of it being bad, it now requires the player to be exceptionally disciplined with it, kind of like how sparingly the pros use Winston's bubble, only using it when absolutely necessary because its cooldown is long, at least in that hyper-organized context. So the best way to use it is actually not use it until you really need it, because its punishment gap is so much wider. Presumably then, Boombox is joking about dying frequently while they all adjust to it, because you just can't save people with DM quite like you used to. I don't know about anyone else, but all this makes me want to see the start of the Overwatch League happen way sooner than mid-February. It might still be GOATs, as many have said, but the longer gap on Defense Matrix does give room for some impact, and that's the root of why I personally find GOATs a chore to watch sometimes. It can appear quite attritional to a viewer with so much anti-damage in one comp, and I do obviously understand there is a ton of skill in it, but there is a part of me that longs for the kind of hype impact plays from Season 1 in the Mercy Zen meta. That might be heresy to some, but that's just how I feel. Up next, we've got a very interesting article from Pashal over at InvenGlobal, where she sat down with Slasher to talk about his problems with where Overwatch currently is and where it needs to be. This again is very long, so I'm just going to summarize parts of it, and the link to the full thing will be in the description so you can go and read it for yourself. There was also this tweet by Slasher that he put out 2 days later, which outlined a lot of his thoughts. Let's look at that first. Jeff and the Overwatch team must make some of the following changes: solo queue, 2-2-2 DPS tank support role queue, faster and more impactful hero balancing, scoreboard, replace or overhaul 2CP assault, new game mode, full FPL, which is pro pugs for money, a system that face it runs on a game like Counter-Strike, crossplay with console, and demos. Now, you might recognize a lot of those because they're concepts we've spoken about on this channel for a very long time. Some of them we even said way back when in 2016. Now, personally, there are some ideas that I might feel slightly different about, like wanting a hero ban system and map vetoes in place of reworks to entire modes like 2CP, but I do understand not all of you guys love those ideas either. either. However, I certainly agree with a lot of the sentiment in Slasher's tweets and the interview article. The game does need to integrate some actual esports-centric features. My biggest pet peeves are the lack of ways to actively train specific skill sets in-game through decent training levels or tools, and still not being able to watch my own demos or that of very high-level players as a learning resource nearly 3 years in. I would obviously say rank needs major work too, but all of you guys know how we feel about that subject as well. The really interesting part of the article for me, though, is where Slasher singles out the devs and in particular Jeff Kaplan for some constructive criticism. Slasher cites Jeff's public reluctance to embrace pure solo queue or role queue and how they've approached one-tricking as being a causal factor in how Overwatch has ended up where it is. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, the devs deserve massive credit for all the successes Overwatch has achieved, but that they also bear responsibility for the areas in which it fails and that those failures need addressing. A big part of Slasher's argument is that while Blizzard may prefer anyone of influence to talk to them privately, the actual way to get the community's voice heard is by voicing concerns publicly. He feels this is the best way to actually get stuff done, even if, in the past, there have been rumours Blizzard actively discouraged people endemic to the scene from doing so. As he says, public feedback doesn't have to be drama. In fact, it definitely shouldn't be handled in a petulant way, but the community does need to make itself coherent about specific issues rather than try and talk about everything all at the same time. For our part, we do feel like we've tried to do this when we've actually got to speak to devs and do interviews, but I think it's actually on all of us to try and constructively relay what we think the priorities for the game are. Slasher says devs don't want our solutions, which I guess is fair enough, but what we think needs work, that is manageable. I really recommend you go and read the full article. Even if you don't agree with some of its content, I think you'll find it quite engaging. As always, let us know what you think about any of the stories in today's video, including that new skin. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in great company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter so you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time,